Natalie Brooks pressed her pen against the ivory paper, her hand trembling slightly as she poured her heart into words. The clock on her apartment wall showed 1:30 in the morning, but sleep felt impossible tonight. For 18 months, she had worked at Sterling Innovations. And for 18 months, she had been captivating by Julian Sterling in ways that terrified and thrilled her. She was 27 years old. A talented graphic designer who had moved from Boston to New York City, with dreams bigger than her small-town upbringing could contain. Her parents owned a flower shop back home, and they had supported her ambitions even when money was tight. It felt like touching a star. But Julian Sterling was something else entirely. At 35, he had built Sterling Innovations from a garage startup into a company worth billions. His success story was legendary in the tech world, yet what captured Natalie's attention was not just his brilliant mind or his accomplishments. It was the quiet moments she witnessed when others were not watching. The man behind the success. She remembered the evening 6 months ago when she stayed late working on a presentation. Julian had appeared in the design studio around midnight, rolled up his sleeves, and helped her troubleshoot a technical issue. He spoke about design with genuine passion, treating her ideas with respect and curiosity. That night, education in underprivileged schools. He made the announcement quietly, almost reluctantly, as if the attention embarrassed him. Natalie saw the genuine care in his eyes. When he spoke about giving young people opportunities to explore their creativity, his rare smiles became precious to her. The way his stern expression softened when someone shared good news. How he remembered small details about his employees' lives, asking about their families and their interests. Julian Sterling was not just a successful billionaire. He was a man of depth and character, and Natalie had fallen completely in love with him. Words from the heart now. Sitting at her small kitchen table, Natalie let her feelings flow onto the paper. She wrote about how his dedication to innovation inspired her own creative work, how his kindness toward others made her believe in goodness. She confessed that working beside him, even from a distance, morning she found a handwritten note on her desk praising her design work with genuine appreciation. The way his presence made ordinary days feel extraordinary. She wrote that she understood their positions. Made any relationship complicated. She was just a designer. He was the CEO and founder. But she needed him to know that someone saw not just his success, but his soul. That someone appreciated the man he was when the boardroom doors closed and the cameras stopped flashing at the bottom of the letter. Natalie signed simply, with admiration and hope. Natalie followed by a small hand-drawn heart, something that felt both childish and honest. The point of no return at 2:45 in the morning. Natalie returned to the Sterling Innovations building. The security guard, Thomas, knew her from her late-night work sessions and waved her through with a friendly smile. Her heart pounded as she rode the elevator to the executive floor. Julian's office was dark and empty. The space reflected his personality, modern and efficient, yet warm with personal touches. Photographs of his team celebrating product launches lined one wall. A shelf held books on design, philosophy, and innovation. His desk was organized, but not sterile. With a coffee mug that read, "Create something amazing today," Natalie placed the sealed cream envelope in the center of his desk where he would see it first thing in the morning. Her hands shook as she set it down. This was either the bravest or most foolish thing she had ever done. Maybe both. The gathering storm the next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Natalie arrived at her desk at 8:30, her stomach twisted with anxiety and anticipation. Her colleague and friend Carmen Rodriguez noticed immediately. "You look like you are about to face a firing squad," Carmen said, concerned. "What happened?" "Nothing. Just nervous about the campaign launch next week," Natalie lied, managing a weak smile. The morning dragged painfully. Natalie tried to focus on her design work, but her mind kept drifting to Julian's office 3 floors above. Had he found the letter? What did he think? Would he understand her feelings? Or would he think she was inappropriate and unprofessional? At 11:15, her phone buzzed with a company-wide alert. Mandatory staff meeting. Conference room 1. 11:45. All employees required to attend. Natalie's blood ran cold. Julian rarely called these meetings unless something significant was happening. A merger announcement, a major product launch, company policy changes, but something in her gut told her this was different. The Moment of Destruction Conference. Room 1 filled rapidly with employees from every department. Designers, developers, marketing staff, executives. At least 100 people crowded into the large space. The atmosphere buzzed with curiosity and speculation. Then Julian walked in, and silence fell like a curtain. He looked commanding in his navy suit, his expression carved from stone. Natalie felt her pulse racing as his eyes swept across the assembled crowd. When his gaze passed over her, she thought she saw something flicker in his face. A moment of recognition, or perhaps pain, but it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "Thank you for gathering on short notice," Julian began, his voice carrying authority that made everyone stand a little straighter. "Regarding professional boundaries and workplace conduct."
Natalie?
Felt her world beginning to crumble. No, this could not be happening. Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. The one she had placed on his desk just hours ago. The one containing her heart laid bare. "This morning I found this letter on my desk," Julian continued, his voice cold and distant. "It is a personal communication of a romantic nature from an employee. I want to make something absolutely clear to everyone in this company." He held up the envelope for everyone to see. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Natalie felt as if she were falling through ice, cold shock spreading through her body. "This behavior is completely unacceptable and unprofessional," Julian stated firmly. Then, with deliberate and measured movements, he tore the envelope in half. The sound echoed in the silent room like a gunshot. He tore it again and again. Small pieces of cream-colored paper fell onto the conference table like snow. Each torn fragment a piece of Natalie's heart. "Personal feelings and romantic fantasies have no place in a professional environment," Julian continued, his voice hard. "We are here to innovate, to create, and to maintain appropriate boundaries. This kind of infatuation is not only unwelcome, it is a distraction from excellence." Natalie felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. She bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. Around her, she felt people glancing in different directions, trying to identify who had written the letter. "If anyone has questions about appropriate workplace conduct, my office is available," Julian concluded. "That is all. Return to your work." The room emptied in uncomfortable silence. Natalie remained frozen in her seat, staring at the scattered pieces of her letter on the table. Each torn fragment represented her hope, her courage, her vulnerability, all destroyed in front of 100 witnesses. Carmen gently touched her arm. "Come on, let us leave." Natalie stood on legs that felt like water and walked out of the conference room. She could feel eyes following her. Somehow people knew. Her reaction had betrayed her. The color draining from her face, the way she stared at those torn pieces, it did not matter now. The humiliation was absolute and complete. 3 years had passed since that devastating day in Conference Room 1, and Natalie Brooks had transformed herself in ways she never thought possible. Paris had become her sanctuary, her proving ground, and the place where she discovered who she truly was beyond the heartbreak. She stood now in her elegant office overlooking the Champs-Élysées. The Eiffel Tower, visible in the distance, through the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 30 years old, Natalie was the creative director of Lumi Uri Design Agency, one of the most prestigious creative firms in Europe. Her work had been featured in international publications, and companies across the globe sought her expertise. The broken girl who fled New York was gone, replaced by a woman who commanded respect in every boardroom she entered. Her dark hair was styled in a sophisticated cut that framed her face perfectly. Her wardrobe had evolved from modest business casual to elegant designer pieces that reflected her success. But more importantly, her confidence had grown from the inside out. The escape and transformation after that horrific meeting. Natalie had lasted exactly 2 more weeks at Sterling Innovations. Every day felt like walking through fire. The whispers followed her everywhere. Some colleagues offered sympathy, others curiosity, and a few showed judgment. She could not look at the executive floor without feeling the crushing weight of humiliation. She had submitted transfer requests to every international office, desperate to escape. When none came through quickly enough, she made a bolder choice. She resigned, packed her belongings, and used her savings to move to Paris. The city had always called to her creative spirit, and running away suddenly felt like running towards something better. Those first months in Paris were brutal. Her French was passable but not fluent. Finding work without connections proved challenging. She lived in a tiny apartment in the Marais district, surviving on bread, cheese, and determination. Some nights, she cried herself to sleep, remembering Julian's cold eyes as he destroyed her letter. But Natalie refused to let that moment define her forever. She poured her pain into her work, creating portfolio pieces that showcased not just technical skill, but emotional depth. Her designs began catching attention. A small boutique hired her, then a larger firm. Within a year, she was leading projects. Within 2 years, Lumiere Design Agency recruited her as their youngest creative director. The unexpected message: Natalie was reviewing design concepts for a luxury hotel chain when her assistant, Sophie, knocked on her office door. Sophie was a bright young woman fresh from design school, reminding Natalie of herself years ago. They are launching a major rebranding initiative and specifically requested you for the project. Natalie's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Sterling Innovations. The name alone sent her heart racing. She had successfully avoided any news about the company for 3 years. No articles, no industry reports, nothing that might bring Julian Sterling back into her consciousness. Tell them we are fully booked, Natalie said quickly, her voice steady despite her internal turmoil. I already mentioned our schedule, Sophie replied hesitantly. They are offering triple our standard rate. The project director emphasized that you specifically are whose expertise they need. Apparently, their current rebranding efforts have failed twice, and the company is facing significant market challenges. Natalie set down her coffee carefully. Triple rate meant significant revenue for her agency. More importantly, it meant recognition that her skills were invaluable. The same company that had witnessed her humiliation now needed her desperately enough to pay premium rates. Schedule a video conference, Natalie said finally. I will hear their proposal, but make clear that my participation is not guaranteed, regardless of compensation. The conference 2 days later, Natalie sat in her conference room as the video screen flickered to life. She expected to see project managers or marketing directors. Instead, Julian Sterling himself appeared on the screen, and her breath caught in her throat. He looked different. Older, though only 3 years had passed. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before. His expression carried a weight that seemed heavier than she remembered. But he was still devastatingly handsome, still possessed that commanding presence that had captivated her years ago. Thank you for taking this meeting. Mr. Sterling, Natalie replied coolly, proud that her voice did not shake. I understand your company is experiencing difficulties with its rebranding initiative. She watched something flicker across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at her directness. Or maybe recognition of how much she had changed. The nervous young designer who once trembled in his presence was gone. We are, Julian admitted. Our market position has weakened over the past 2 years. Competitors have gained ground. Our brand identity no longer resonates with our target audience. 2 agencies have failed to deliver effective solutions. And you believe I can succeed where others have failed, Natalie stated rather than asked. Your work speaks for itself, Julian said, his eyes meeting hers through the screen. The Bellamy Hotel campaign, the Renaissance Technology rebrand, the Marseille Fashion Week identity. You have become one of the most sought-after creative directors in Europe. Your understanding of how design communicates emotion and value is exactly what Sterling Innovations needs. Natalie felt a surge of satisfaction hearing him acknowledge her success. The man who had publicly humiliated her now sat before her needing her expertise. The irony was not lost on her. The decision I will need complete creative control, Natalie said firmly. No interference from executives. No compromises based on personal preferences. If I take this project, you trust my vision, or you find someone else. Julian nodded slowly. Agreed. I will also need direct access to company data, employee feedback, and customer research. Transparency is essential. You will have everything you need, Julian promised. One more condition, Natalie added, her voice steady. All communication goes through project managers. I work with your team, not with you personally. Our past makes direct collaboration inappropriate. Something changed in Julian's expression. Pain flickered across his features before he masked it. If that is what you require? It is, Natalie confirmed. Send the contracts to my office. I will review them with my legal team and provide a decision within 48 hours. The meeting ended, and the screen went dark. Natalie sat alone in her conference room, her heart pounding. Seeing Julian again had reopened wounds she thought had healed. No longer the vulnerable woman whose heart he had shattered. She had rebuilt herself into someone he needed, someone he had to treat with respect. Memories resurfaced that night. Natalie could not sleep. She stood on her apartment balcony overlooking the Seine River, a glass of wine in her hand. Paris twinkled below her, beautiful and alive. She had built a good life here. Did she really want to risk her peace by working with Sterling Innovations? Her mind drifted back to that terrible day 3 years ago. After the meeting, she had locked herself in the restroom and cried until no more tears would come. Then she had returned to her desk, typed a resignation letter, and sent it before she could change her mind. She remembered packing her apartment, saying goodbye to Carmen, and boarding a plane to Paris with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. The first months had been lonely and difficult. She knew no one. Her French was terrible. She missed her family and her friends. But slowly, painfully, she had rebuilt herself. Each successful project became a building block of confidence. Each client who praised her work healed a small piece of her shattered self-worth. She had learned that she was talented, capable, and strong enough to succeed on her own terms. What, Natalie did not know what Natalie could not know was that 3 floors above the conference room where Julian had torn her letter, he had returned to his office and collapsed into his chair with his head in his hands. The moment he saw her face in the crowd, saw the devastation in her eyes. He had realized the magnitude of his mistake. He had kept every torn piece of her letter. Late that same night, alone in his office, he had carefully gathered all the fragments from the conference room. He spent hours trying to fit them back together like a puzzle. Reading her beautiful words through the tears and rips, Julian had locked those pieces in his desk drawer. And they had remained there for 3 years. Some nights, when the weight of running his company felt crushing, he would take them out and read what he could make out through the damage he had inflicted. Her words about admiration, hope, and seeing his soul haunted him. He had tried to find her after she resigned. But Natalie had vanished completely. No forwarding address. No social media presence. It was as if she had erased herself from existence. He had respected her apparent wish to be left alone. But he never stopped wondering where she was, if she was happy. If she had found someone who treated her heart with the care it deserved. When his marketing team presented a list of potential creative directors for the rebranding project, Julian had seen her name and felt his heart stop. Natalie Brooks, Paris, Lumiere, design agency. She had not just survived, she had soared. On his desk, his heart had soared. He had read her words 3 times, feeling emotions he had suppressed for months. He had feelings for Natalie, too. Her talent, her kindness, her genuine spirit had captivated him from the moment she joined his company. But before he could process his response, his father had walked into his office. Richard Sterling was a ruthless businessman who owned 40% of Sterling Innovations. He demanded to know what the letter was about. Julian had tried to deflect, but his father snatched the letter and read it. "This is unacceptable," Richard had said coldly. "You will end this immediately and publicly. If you show any interest in this girl, I will use my board influence to have her terminated and blacklisted from the industry. Make it clear that workplace romances are forbidden, or she pays the price for your weakness." Julian had tried to argue, but his father was immovable. The company was at a critical juncture with investors. Any scandal or distraction could damage their position. Richard made it clear that Natalie's career would be destroyed if Julian did not handle the situation decisively, so Julian had made the worst decision of his life. He called the company-wide meeting. He tore up the letter publicly. He said cruel things he did not mean, all to protect Natalie from his father's vindictiveness. Even though she would never know the real reason behind his actions, he had thought he was saving her career. Instead, he had driven her away and broken her heart. The guilt had consumed him for 3 years. An unexpected encounter 5 days after their video conference. Natalie found herself at an international technology conference in Amsterdam. Lumiere Design had been invited to present a case study on innovative brand transformation. She had accepted the speaking invitation weeks before, knowing about Sterling Innovations. Her presentation went brilliantly. The audience of executives and creative professionals responded enthusiastically to her insights about connecting emotional storytelling with brand identity. After her talk, several people approached her with questions and business cards. Then she saw him. Julian Sterling stood near the back of the conference hall watching her. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Natalie felt that old familiar pull, the magnetic attraction that had drawn her to him years ago. But now it was mixed with hurt, anger, and hard-won self-respect. Julian made his way through the crowd toward her. Natalie considered walking away, but decided to stand her ground. She was not the same frightened girl anymore. "Your presentation was exceptional," Julian said when he reached her. "Your insights about authentic brand storytelling were exactly what the industry needs to hear." "Thank you," Natalie replied formally. "I did not expect to see you here." "I came specifically to hear you speak," Julian admitted. "I wanted to understand your approach before our companies potentially work together." "You could have watched the recording later," Natalie pointed out. "I could have," Julian agreed. "But I wanted to see you in person, to see how you have grown and succeeded. Natalie, you have become extraordinary." The compliment felt genuine, and that made it harder to maintain her emotional distance. Natalie felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "I became extraordinary because I had to rebuild myself from nothing," Natalie said quietly but firmly. "After you destroyed more than just a letter that day, you destroyed my confidence, my sense of safety, and my ability to trust my own judgment."
Oh.
Julian's face showed genuine pain. "I know, and I have regretted that day every moment since." "Regret does not undo damage," Natalie replied. "I have spent 3 years healing from what you did. I agreed to consider your project because I am professional enough to separate business from personal history. But do not mistake that for forgiveness." Before Julian could respond, Sophie appeared at Natalie's elbow. "The car is ready whenever you are." Natalie nodded and turned back to Julian. "I will send my decision about the project within 24 hours. Goodbye, Mr. Sterling." She walked away without looking back, her head held high. But her heart was racing and her emotions were churning. Seeing Julian again, hearing the regret in his voice, had stirred feelings she thought she had buried forever. As her car pulled away from the conference center, Natalie pressed her hand against the window and allowed herself one moment of vulnerability. Part of her still loved him, and that terrified her more than anything. Natalie sat in her Paris office the next morning. The Sterling Innovations contract spread across her desk. Sophie had brought her coffee an hour ago, but it sat untouched and cold. Outside her window, Paris was waking up under a soft morning light. But Natalie barely noticed the beauty. She had spent the entire night wrestling with her decision. Professionally, accepting this project made perfect sense. The compensation was extraordinary. The challenge was significant. Success would elevate her reputation even further in the industry. Lumiere Design Agency would benefit enormously from such a high-profile client. But personally, the thought of working with Sterling Innovations meant reopening a chapter she had fought so hard to close. It meant potential contact with Julian, despite her conditions about working only with project managers. It meant revisiting memories that still had the power to hurt her. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother back in Boston. "Thinking of you today, sweetheart. Remember that you are stronger than any challenge that comes your way. Love you." Natalie smiled softly. Her mother always seemed to know when she needed encouragement, even from across the ocean. Her parents had been her anchor during those dark months after she left New York. They had listened to her cry over video calls, sent care packages to her tiny Paris apartment. Whatever happened, she would face it as the woman she had become, not the girl she used to be. The project begins 2 weeks later. Natalie arrived in New York with her core creative team. The irony of returning to the city she had fled was not lost on her. But this time, she checked into a luxury hotel in Tribeca, not a modest apartment. She arrived in a private car, not on the subway. She walked through the city as a successful creative director, not a heartbroken employee. Sterling Innovations had arranged a dedicated workspace for her team on the 8th floor. Far from the executive offices, the project manager, a capable woman named Victoria Chen, greeted them warmly and provided comprehensive access to company data, research, and resources. "Mr. Sterling has made it clear that you have complete authority over this project," Victoria explained. "Whatever you need, we will provide. He wants you to have total creative freedom." Natalie nodded professionally. "I appreciate that. My team and I will spend the first week conducting research, interviewing employees, and analyzing your current brand positioning. We will present our initial findings and strategic direction at the end of week 2. The work consumed her completely. Natalie interviewed dozens of Sterling Innovations employees, from junior developers to senior executives. She studied market research, analyzed competitor positioning, immersed herself in understanding. What had gone wrong with the company's brand identity? What she discovered was fascinating. Sterling Innovations had become so focused on appearing professional and corporate that it had lost the innovative spirit that made it special. The brand felt cold and impersonal. Customers no longer connected emotionally with the company. Employees felt disconnected from the mission. Natalie began developing a strategy to reconnect Sterling Innovations with its core values of innovation, creativity, and human-centered technology. Her vision was bold and would require significant changes, but she believed it could transform the company's market position. The confrontation on her 10th day in New York. Natalie was working late in the 8th floor conference room. Her team had left hours ago, but she wanted to refine some concepts before the next morning's presentation. The building was quiet. "You always did your best work late at night." Natalie spun around to find Julian standing in the doorway. He looked tired, his tie loosened, and his jacket draped over his arm. Despite herself, her heart skipped at the sight of him. "Mr. Sterling," she said coolly, "I was not expecting anyone to still be here." "I could say the same," Julian replied, stepping into the room. "May I see what you are working on?" "The presentation is scheduled for tomorrow morning with your full team," Natalie said, closing her laptop protectively. "You will see it then." "Natalie, please," Julian said, and the vulnerability in his voice made her pause. "Can we talk?" "Not about the project. About what happened 3 years ago." "There is nothing to discuss," Natalie replied, though her voice wavered slightly. "You made your feelings clear. You tore up my letter in front of 100 people. You called my feelings an unwelcome distraction." "I heard you perfectly." "You heard what I said," Julian corrected gently. "But you do not know why I said it." "The why does not matter anymore," Natalie said, gathering her materials. "I have moved on. I have built a successful life. What you did pushed me to become stronger, so perhaps I should thank you for the motivation." "Natalie, my father threatened to destroy your career if I showed any interest in you," Julian said suddenly, his words rushing out. "That morning when I found your letter, he walked into my office. He read it. He told me that if I responded to your feelings in any way, he would use his influence on the board to have you fired and blacklisted from the industry. He said any hint of scandal or workplace romance would damage the company during a critical investment period." Natalie froze, her hand on the conference room door. She turned slowly to face him. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I destroyed your letter publicly because I was trying to protect you," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. If I rejected you harshly and publicly, my father would leave you alone. I thought I was saving your career, even if it meant you would hate me forever.
Ow.
The revelation Natalie felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You were telling me that you humiliated me to protect me? I know how it sounds, Julian said desperately. I know I handled it terribly. I should have found another way. I should have told you privately what was happening. But I panicked. My father is ruthless, Natalie. He has destroyed careers before. I could not let him do that to you. So instead you destroyed me yourself, Natalie whispered, tears burning in her eyes. Do you have any idea what that day did to me? How small and foolish and worthless I felt. I saw your face in that conference room, Julian said, his own eyes glistening. I saw exactly what I was doing to you, and it killed me. But I thought it was better than what my father would do. You should have trusted me with the truth, Natalie said, her voice breaking. You should have given me the choice about my own career, my own dignity. Instead, you made decisions for me like I was a child who could not handle reality. I was a coward. I chose the easy path, the path that let me feel like a protector instead of facing the harder conversation. I have regretted it every single day since. Natalie sank into a conference room chair, her mind reeling. 3 years of anger and hurt were suddenly complicated by this new information. She did not know what to feel. The preserved letter Julian reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He placed it gently on the conference table in front of Natalie. She opened it with trembling hands and gasped. Inside were all the pieces of her letter, carefully arranged and preserved between sheets of clear archival paper. Someone had painstakingly fitted the torn fragments back together like a puzzle. The tape on the back held it together, and though the letter was scarred with tears and creases, every word was readable. I kept every piece, Julian said softly. I went back to that conference room after everyone left and gathered every single fragment. I spent that entire night putting it back together. I have kept it in my desk for 3 years. On difficult days, I take it out and read your words. Natalie touched the preserved letter gently, seeing her own handwriting from 3 years ago. The vulnerability she had felt writing those words came rushing back, but now it was mixed with the knowledge that Julian had treasured them, even as he destroyed them publicly. I fell in love with you the moment you started working here, Julian continued, his voice raw with honesty. Watching you in meetings, seeing how your mind worked, how you treated everyone with kindness regardless of their position. Your letter was not unwelcome or a distraction. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given me, and I ruined it because I was too afraid to stand up to my father. Why are you telling me this now? Natalie asked, looking up at him through tears. Because you deserve the truth, Julian said simply. Because I've spent 3 years watching you from a distance, following your success, being proud of everything you have accomplished, and hating myself for the role I played in driving you away. When I saw your name on that list of potential creative directors, I knew it was a chance to see you again, even if only professionally. But I could not let another day pass without you knowing the truth about what happened. The weight of the past, Natalie stood and walked to the window, looking out at the New York skyline. The city glittered in the darkness, full of life and possibility. She had fled this place broken and terrified. Now she stood here as someone who had rebuilt herself from ashes. I understand why you think you were protecting me, Natalie said carefully. But Julian, you took away my agency. You made choices about my life without including me in the decision. That is not protection. That is control, disguised as care. I know, Julian said quietly. I understand that now. I have had 3 years to realize all the ways I failed you that day. Your father threatened my career, Natalie continued, turning to face him. But you destroyed my heart. In trying to save me from one pain, you inflicted a different kind that cut much deeper. Do you see the difference? Julian nodded, his expression anguished. I do. And I am sorrier than words can express. I do not expect forgiveness, Natalie. I just needed you to know that everything you wrote in that letter, I felt it too. I still feel it. Watching you present at that conference in Amsterdam, seeing the brilliant, confident woman you have become, It reminded me of everything I lost when I pushed you away.
Ow.
The choice Natalie felt tears streaming down her face now. All the emotions she had suppressed for 3 years finally breaking free. Anger, hurt, sadness, but also something else. And beneath it all, the terrifying realization that her feelings for Julian had never truly disappeared. I spent 3 years hating you, she said softly. 3 years using that anger as fuel to become successful. I told myself that I would make you regret what you did, that I would become so accomplished you would see what you had lost. You succeeded, Julian said with a sad smile. I have regretted losing you every single day. But here's what you need to understand, Natalie continued, her voice growing stronger. I did not become successful because of you, or in spite of you. I became successful because I chose to believe in myself when no one else did. I rebuilt my confidence brick by brick. I learned that my worth is not determined by whether someone loves me or rejects me. That is the gift that came from my pain. You're absolutely right, Julian agreed. Your success is entirely your own. I claim no credit for it. Natalie wiped her tears and took a deep breath. I need time to process this. The truth changes things, but it does not erase 3 years of hurt. I do not know if I can forgive you. I do not know if I should. I understand, Julian said. Take all the time you need. I will complete this project because I committed to it professionally, Natalie added. But after that, I need space to figure out what I feel, what I want, and whether there is any path forward for us beyond a professional relationship. Julian nodded, hope and pain mixed in his expression. That is more than I deserve. New understanding the following week. Natalie presented her rebranding strategy to the Sterling Innovations leadership team. Her vision was bold and transformative. She proposed reconnecting the company with its innovative roots, creating a brand identity that felt human and creative rather than cold and corporate. The presentation was brilliant. The leadership team responded with enthusiasm, and even Julian, who attended as requested by his board, looked impressed and moved by her insights. She had taken everything she learned about the company and crafted a strategy that honored its past while building toward its future. After the presentation, Victoria approached Natalie with genuine admiration. That was exceptional. The board has already approved moving forward with your full proposal. Whatever you need from us to execute this vision, you have it. Natalie felt a surge of professional pride. This was why she had worked so hard, why she had rebuilt herself. Moments like this, where her talent and vision were recognized and valued, reminded her of her own worth. As her team celebrated that evening at a restaurant in Manhattan, Natalie found herself thinking about Julian's revelation. The anger that had fueled her for 3 years felt different now. It had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something more complex. She understood his position better, even if she did not agree with his choices. Healing and hope over the next month. As Natalie and her team worked to implement the rebranding strategy, she found herself occasionally crossing paths with Julian. Their interactions were professional but carried an undercurrent of awareness. He respected her boundaries, never pushing for personal conversations. But she could feel his attention, his care, his regret. One evening, as Natalie prepared to return to Paris, she found herself standing outside Sterling Innovations building. Looking up at the structure that had once represented her greatest humiliation, now it represented something different. A challenge she had overcome, a success she had earned, a piece of her past she was finally making peace with. Her phone buzzed with a message from Julian. Before you leave, there is something I would like to show you. No pressure. Only if you want. Meeting room 12, bites at 7 p.m. Natalie hesitated, then replied, I will be there. The final piece, meeting room 1-B, was small and private, tucked away on a quiet floor. When Natalie entered, she found Julian standing beside a display board. Oh, what is this? Natalie asked, confused. This is every article, every award announcement, every project feature about your work that I could find, Julian explained. I have followed your career from the moment you left New York. not to intrude on your life, but because I needed to know you were okay, that you were thriving. Watching you succeed from a distance was the only way I could cope with losing you." Natalie approached the display, seeing her own journey reflected back at her. The Bellamy Hotel campaign, the Renaissance technology rebrand, award ceremonies, magazine features, all carefully preserved and displayed. "You kept track of all this?" she whispered. "Every success you achieved, every boundary you broke?" I celebrated it privately. "I know I have no right to feel proud of you, but I could not help it. The woman who wrote me that letter 3 years ago was extraordinary, and you proved it to the entire world." This display represented years of attention, of care, of connection maintained even in absence. It was both moving and overwhelming. "Julian, I do not know what to do with this," she admitted. "I do not know how to process everything you have told me, everything you have shown me." "You do not have to decide anything right now," Julian said gently. "I just wanted you to know that even when I pushed you away, even when I hurt you, I never stopped caring about you. I never stopped loving you, Natalie. And if there is ever a chance, even the smallest possibility that you could forgive me and give us a real chance, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of the trust I broke." The path forward. Natalie stood in that small meeting room and felt something shift inside her heart. The anger that had sustained her for 3 years was finally releasing its grip. In its place was something more mature, understanding, compassion, and beneath it all, the tentative stirring of hope. "I cannot promise you anything," Natalie said finally. "The hurt was real. The damage was real. Trust is not something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I know," Julian said. "But," Natalie continued, meeting his eyes directly. The restaurant Julian chose was elegant yet intimate, a small bistro known for its incredible food and quiet ambience. When I arrived, he was already there at a corner table. Seeing him, my breath hitched. He looked different than he did in New York. More relaxed, happier. The heavy burden he always seemed to carry was gone. When his eyes met mine, his face broke into a smile that was so genuine, so warm, it reached deep into his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said as I sat down. "You look happy," I replied, and I truly meant it. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing as easily as it had over countless phone calls these past few months. We talked about work, our families, our dreams for the future. I found myself laughing, a real, genuine laugh. Finally enjoying his company without the ghost of past hurts looming over us. After dinner, we walked along the Seine. The city lights danced on the water's surface, creating a magical glow. He tentatively reached for my hand, and after just a moment's hesitation, I let him take it. A familiar warmth spread through me, a feeling that was both old and new. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Natalie," he began softly, "I know we're taking things slowly, and I know there's still healing to do, but I need you to know, this last 6 months, getting to know you again, learning who you've become, it's been the greatest gift of my life. Whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you set, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I looked up at him, into his eyes, and saw nothing but sincerity. 3 years ago, I wrote him a letter, pouring out my heart. He destroyed it in public, but secretly kept every single piece. Now, standing here in Paris, the city where I had rebuilt my life, a realization washed over me. "I forgive you," I said quietly. The words felt heavy and light all at once. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But I'm forgiving you because holding on to that anger is only holding me back. I forgive you, Julian. I'm ready to see where this goes. He gently pulled me into his arms, and I let myself be held. It felt different from all the times I had imagined it. It felt real, earned, and so much more precious because of how hard it was to get here. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. "I've loved you since the moment I read that letter. I will spend the rest of my life proving that your trust in me isn't misplaced. I love you too," I admitted, and the words felt like freedom. But this time, we build something equal. No more secrets. No more misguided attempts at protection that take away my choices. We face everything together, Together, he agreed, holding me tighter. Always together. We stood there by the river as Paris glowed around us. Two people who had found each other, lost each other, and fought their way back to a love that was now stronger for having been tested. The letter had been torn apart, but just like the fragments Julian had so carefully saved, our love had been pieced back together, creating something whole and beautiful again. I had given my heart to a millionaire 3 years ago, and he had broken it in the worst way imaginable. But through pain and growth, forgiveness and truth, we found our way back to something neither of us expected, a love built on equality, honesty, and the courage to try again. As we walked back through the Parisian streets hand in hand, I smiled. My story wasn't about a letter destroyed or a heart broken. It was about a woman who found her strength, a man who learned from his mistakes, and a love that proved true. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that start with an ending, only to find their way to a brand new beginning.